Welcome back, lovely ladies. If you want to become the woman of your dreams, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. And join our Patreon for even more exclusive content. Now, let's dive into today's story.
Bob and Roxanne roamed the room, chatting with the other guests at the gathering. Many were acquaintances from different places, familiar enough for polite conversation, but not much more. The food was good, the drinks even better. They were having a decent time. It was a casual party at an old friend's house. Actually, it was a friend of Bob's, a girl he'd gone out with a couple of times before he and Roxanne had met. It was several hours into the party when Roxanne, who was also several drinks in, noticed Bob had wandered off. She started looking for him and eventually found him in the kitchen with Alice, their arms around each other's waists, talking with a small group of people. They looked too close standing there. Alice just about an inch taller than Bob, her long blonde hair flowing down her back. A wave of anger washed over Roxanne. She turned away and grabbed another drink. Bob eventually returned to the living room and found Roxanne sitting in an overstuffed chair, a full drink beside her. "Hey, I've been looking for you." He perched on the arm of the chair. "Oh, I bet," she muttered. "What?" He recognized the tone in her voice and felt his good mood start to evaporate. "I saw you in the kitchen getting all cozy with Alice," she said, picking up her drink and taking a sip. "Didn't look like you were looking for me very hard." "We were talking," he explained. "You could have joined in, just reminiscing about old times." "Old times," she huffed. "You mean the times before we met? The good old days, right?" "Just old times," he sighed. "Not better, not worse, just a different time. What is wrong? I thought we were enjoying the evening." "Sure I was, until I saw you and Alice getting all chummy talking with your old friends, leaving me all alone with people I hardly know." She took another swallow of her drink. "It's a party. I was talking with other people," he pleaded. "Look, maybe we ought to be going. Let me take that drink and pour it out." "No, you don't." She held her glass more tightly. "I'm going to finish my drink." Alice walked in and sat down on the couch. "What's going on in here?" "Oh, we're just talking about the evening," Bob tried to cover. He looked around, realizing they were the only three left in the room and couldn't hear any noise from the other rooms. "Are we all that's left?" "Yeah," Alice laughed. "Seems once a party starts to break up, it breaks up fast." "Well, I guess we ought to be going too," Bob said, trying to start their exit. "I told you I'm going to finish my drink," Roxanne muttered, glaring at Alice. "Are you all right?" Alice asked. "You seem a bit distressed." "Distressed?" Roxanne laughed. "What would I have to be distressed about? Maybe I'm just expected to sit around while my husband gets taken away from me." Another swallow of the drink. "What? Bob, are you having an affair?" Alice's eyes widened. "No, of course not." Bob shook his head. "Rox saw us in the kitchen talking. She thinks you are trying to take me away." "What?" She fell back. "That's ridiculous." "Sure," Roxanne rolled her eyes. "She saw us standing in the kitchen," Bob explained. "Felt we were being too close." "Roxanne, believe me, please," Alice pleaded. "Bob and I are just friends. We only see each other once or twice a year since before you two started dating. He's a great guy, but we just aren't having that kind of a relationship. I respect your marriage and wouldn't do anything to jeopardize it." "Oh, yes, of course," Roxanne slurred. "Neither of you would ever do anything wrong, would you?" "Well, I wouldn't go that far," Bob answered. "None of us here are perfect." "No, not perfect at all, especially my husband. Isn't that true, Bob?" Bob felt a chill run through him. He had no idea what she had in her head. Once she started going down this road, it never ended well. Yeah, I guess that's true. You know," she turned back to Alice, "my hubby has an interesting little hobby." "Roxy," Bob started. "Don't go there." "Why? Afraid your old girlfriend might think a little less of you if she found out?" "Roxanne," Alice spoke softly. "First, Bob and I only went out a couple of times. Second, I don't need to hear anything that is private between you." "Private between us?" Roxanne laughed. "Oh no, this is just for him. I wanted no part of it, and I haven't said anything about it since he told me about it before we got married. Come to think of it, he told me before we were even engaged." "Well, then perhaps it isn't something I need to hear about." Alice attempted to soothe her. "I agree," Bob spoke up. and I think we need to be going. Come on, we're keeping Alice from doing whatever she wants to do. I told you, Roxanne growled. I'm going to finish my drink. Bob looked at Alice, slumped over knowing he wouldn't be able to stop her now. Alice looked back at Bob with pity in her eyes, but she also had no idea how to stop her. Secretly, they were both thinking the same thing. Maybe she'll pass out. Roxanne put her glass back down and looked at the other two people in the room. She was relishing the cruelty she was weaving. She let the silence draw out for a few moments. Bob likes dressing up, she announced. Really? Alice looked at Bob confused. I thought you didn't like to dress up. Always Mr. Casual. Oh, he hates suits and ties and even slacks. Absolutely despises wearing dress shoes. Says they hurt his feet too much. Then I don't understand. Alice looked at Bob, who had his eyes closed and head bowed. He had moved from the arm of the chair to another chair. Oh, he would love to dress up in a formal gown with silk stockings and high heels. Or maybe it wouldn't have to be so formal. He'd like a nice dress, or perhaps a skirt and blouse would do. Isn't that right, honey? Roxanne gloated. Silence enveloped the room once again. Bob was too mortified to say anything. Alice was unable to speak. Roxanne just sipped at her drink again, grinning from ear to ear. She had scored a direct hit. She savored her victory but started thinking maybe she would push it further. Maybe you'd like to see it for yourself, she pressed. Perhaps you have something he'd like to wear for you. A dress or… No, wait. She looked over at Bob. Maybe some sexy lingerie that he could model for us. What do you think, Bob? Wouldn't you like to show your old flame how you like to enjoy yourself? Not particularly, he whispered. Roxanne, I think you've done enough damage here. Alice spoke up. There isn't any need to embarrass him any further. I am guessing from his reaction that what you have said is true. I still have half a drink, she snapped. Not going anywhere yet. Bob stood up and reached for Roxanne's drink. Come on, it's time we left. No, Roxanne screeched and took a swing at him as he reached for her. Bob backed off, not knowing what to do. He turned and looked back at Alice for help. He could see she was as stumped as he was. I'm so sorry. I am not leaving here until you embarrass yourself the way you've embarrassed me, Roxanne announced. Embarrassed you? Bob looked at her agape. How have I embarrassed you? You are doing a good job of that yourself the way you are acting now. I wouldn't be acting this way if you hadn't been all over each other out in the kitchen, she spat. We were not all over each other, Bob objected. We were standing there. We had our arms around each other, but that was it. It's true, Alice added. We were just talking with everyone else standing there. You know what you need to do to end this. She slumped back in the chair and sipped at her drink again. The glass was nearly empty. Bob looked at Roxanne, trying to silently plead with her, but Roxanne refused to meet his gaze. At last, he turned to look at Alice. She was slumped back as well, frustrated by the situation. Alice, Bob's voice broke as he spoke. I hate to ask, but is there any way to satisfy her request? I'm afraid it might be the only way to get past this. Are you serious? Alice came back. We could just wait her out. As drunk as she is, she'll likely pass out in a few minutes. Ha! Roxanne spat. Now that his little secret is out, he can't wait to get into something of yours. Frankly, I'm afraid that she won't pass out, or if she does, we'll still have to wake her to get her to the car, and we'll be back at it again. I'd rather try and get this over with. Alice sat and thought for several moments. Fine, she sighed. I think I have something that will work. She stood and started toward her bedroom. Better make it good, Roxanne called after her. End this now, Bob pleaded. You got what you wanted. You told her about my hobby. You got me to admit it was true. You don't need to get her to give me her things to wear. You've never wanted to know anything about it after I told you. Why would you think she wants to see it? Just because I don't say anything about it doesn't mean I don't think about it, and you think I don't notice my things have been moved around or wrinkled. I'm reminded of it a lot more often than you think. Now one of your friends will get to enjoy it too. Bob, Alice came back into the room, clearly embarrassed. I set something out on my bed. Take a look and see if you think that will help. She shot a dirty look at Roxanne. Bob got up and sheepishly walked to the bedroom. He found a red and black bustier on the bed with a pair of black stockings and black panties. He couldn't help feeling a little excited about the idea of putting these things on, even though he also dreaded it. He took a deep breath and proceeded to strip off his clothes. He put on the bustier, It was tight and took some work getting it on since he was a bit larger than Alice in all the wrong places and smaller in others. Once in place, he sat on the edge of the bed and worked the stockings up his legs. He had to hold his breath as leaning over kept him from being able to breathe. He could see the hair on his legs in places through the stockings as he connected the tabs to them. His legs weren't very hairy, which he was happy for, but there was some that could be seen on close inspection. He stood up and stepped into the panties. He got a chill as it slid up his legs over the stockings until he slipped it into place. He stepped to a mirror to look. It wasn't pretty, the body wasn't too bad, but his head was decidedly out of place. Then he realized the panties weren't as opaque as he thought. The light fabric made his penis fairly easy to see because they were stretched so tight. He thought about looking for another pair but felt guilty going through Alice's drawers. He briefly wondered if she realized when she set them out. He was about to bite the bullet and go back to the living room when he noticed a black leather miniskirt on a hanger hanging on the doorknob of the closet. He went and checked it out, deciding at last to try it on. It was tight, but he was able to get it zipped up. At least it covered the worst of his problem. Again, he was about to leave when he decided to take a peek into the closet. It took him another minute to find a sheer black blouse that would work. In for a penny, he told himself as he slipped into the blouse. It didn't really cover anything, but it felt right. He took as deep a breath as he could and walked back to the living room. Roxanne and Alice both turned to look at him as he walked into the room. He looked defeated. His shoulders were slumped, his head hung down. Roxanne erupted in laughter. "That's quite an outfit she set out for you." "Actually, Alice," Bob stuttered, "I'm sorry, but I saw the skirt hanging on the knob and decided I needed to borrow it. Then I borrowed the blouse." "That's quite all right," Alice answered, her heart aching to spare him from any more. "Oh, you picked out the skirt and blouse," Roxanne laughed once again. "This is even better than I thought it would be." "Hey, Alice, what do you think of your old boyfriend now?" Alice started to reply but thought better of her initial response. "You know what? It just isn't right getting all dressed up like that and not having any makeup on. Bob, have you ever tried makeup?" Bob's heart fell even further, realizing his friend was now climbing onto the taunts. A tear fell as he shook his head. "Makeup?" Roxanne sneered. "Oh, what a perfect end. Yes, definitely. I was thinking maybe another dress, but makeup for sure." "Well, if you have never done it before, then you will need help." Alice got up and went to Bob. "Roxanne, are you sure you trust me to be alone with him?" "Oh, if you can find anything attractive about him now, I don't know what to think," Roxanne giggled. "Go, try and make him pretty." Alice took Bob by the arm and led him back out of the room. They could hear Roxanne chuckling and talking to herself as they left the room. Once back in the bedroom, Alice had Bob sit on the side of her bed. She took notice of how he tucked his skirt under and folded his hands in his lap. "Look, we can just hang out here for a few minutes," Alice told him. "Without someone to torment, she'll pass out in no time. Why do you put up with this? Is it like this a lot?" Bob sighed. "If you really are going to try and do makeup, you ought to do it. She won't pass out this fast, not now. Something changed a few months ago." He hesitated as Alice started work on his face. "Most of the time things are like they always are. She is kind, helpful, and cheerful. Then all of a sudden it is like someone throws a switch and she goes off on these rants about nothing at all. I've tried to get her to talk to a doctor about it, but so far she hasn't found it necessary. Tonight has been the worst one yet. If she remembers any of this tomorrow, maybe she'll finally go." He sat in silence while Alice continued putting on the mascara, eyeshadow, and lipstick. She was just finishing up when they heard Roxanne call out, "You don't have to try and make him beautiful. Just make him look like the girl he is pretending to be." "Well, I guess that is it then." Alice put down the tube of lipstick. "Take a look, and then head back into the other room. I'll be along shortly." Bob got up and went to the mirror and gaped. "Wow." "Yeah, it isn't bad," Alice smiled. "If I had a little more time and desire, I bet I could make you look even better. You could make for a fairly attractive woman." Bob turned and gave her a smile before leaving to head back to face his wife. "God damn," Roxanne hollered when Bob came in the room. "She did a hell of a job on you. I can still see you in there, but not too bad. No way in hell I would want anything to do with you looking like that." "Gee, thanks," Bob sighed. "Now you got what you wanted. Why don't I get dressed and we leave and get out of Alice's hair?" Speaking of Alice, where is she? Roxanne leaned forward, trying to look past Bob up the hall. I don't know, he told her. She told me to come back in here after she finished my face. So you feeling all girly now? You look like you should be out on a street corner. All you lack is some fuck me pumps. When is this going to end? Bob tugged his skirt down a little. When I say it does, Roxanne barked. This has been quite an educational... Her voice trailed off. Bob turned and looked and saw Alice entering the room behind him, but she had changed, a lot. She was wearing a white mini dress whose long sleeves were only a little shorter than the dress itself. She had a gold rope belt around her waist. Bare legs showed below the dress except for tan gladiator sandals that reached to just below her knees with a 4-inch heel. She had redone her makeup and hair, looking like she was ready for a night out at a club. After doing Bob's makeup for him, I started thinking about how much fun it would be to have a friend like that for playing dress-up and stuff. Usually I would have thought a girlfriend would be perfect for doing it, but now I'm thinking, why not a boyfriend? I mean, look at him. He looks great. It would be fun to do different things together. Tonight is club night. Short skirt, grand makeup, put on some music and dance. Maybe another night we could have a candlelight dinner in formal dresses and quiet music. Maybe watch a chick flick together. I bet you'd like watching one with me, wouldn't you, Bob? She wrapped her arms around one of his arm and rubbed her leg against his. Bob was confused, excited at the prospect of evenings like she suggested, but confused by her suddenly coming on to him this way. She knew he couldn't be unfaithful, especially not with Roxanne sitting right there. She was just going to piss her off more. What the hell are you talking about? Roxanne finally pried herself out of the chair and staggered toward the two of them. He is still my husband. Maybe you would do well to remember that, Alice called back at her. You've tried to destroy this man tonight, tried to make him look bad to me, but what I see is a strong, faithful, loving man that is doing his best to put up with a woman who seems to delight in torturing him. I know he would struggle with having to choose to leave you, but if he did, I'd take him in a heartbeat. I see something in him tonight that I didn't see in him before, and I could surely deal with him liking to wear a dress on occasion if it meant I could have the rest of him all the time. You need to straighten out whatever shit you have going on, or you are going to give me or some other woman a chance to have this amazing man in our life instead of you. Roxanne stood just staring at the two of them. Bob had actually turned to look at Alice, stunned. You're right, Roxanne blinked, and a tear rolled down her face. I don't know what made me do that tonight. I know he wouldn't cheat on me, but when I saw you two looking so chummy, I just felt like he wanted to be rid of me. Bob, I'm sorry. Take me home, please. Roxanne turned and grabbed her purse and stumbled toward the door. Rox, wait, Bob called. I need to change clothes and clean up. Don't worry about it, Alice hugged him. Bring the clothes back when you can. It's late. Just don't get stopped by the cops. You sure? He squeezed her. Yeah, I'll get your clothes from the bedroom. She turned and left him. Bob got to the front door and saw Roxanne leaning against the side of the car. It was locked and the keys were still in his pants pocket. Here you go. Alice handed him a bundle. I hope you get things sorted out. And if you don't, well, I was serious about having date nights in the house. I realized it while I was finishing up your makeup. I started getting all horny thinking about the way things could go. Now you better go tend to your wife. I have another Bob waiting for me. Another Bob? He was confused, knowing they were the only two left in the house. Battery-operated boyfriend, Alice winked. Now go. They kissed briefly on the lips. Both felt a strange sensation from the lipstick on lipstick. Bob turned and walked to the car, fishing through the pockets for his keys, marveling at the odd feeling of the air against his stockinged legs and under his skirt. He punched the button unlocking the car and tossed his clothes in the back. Roxanne didn't move. He scurried around the passenger side and saw she had passed out on her feet. He got the car open and wrestled her into the seat, trying to keep his skirt from riding up. At last he waved to Alice, still watching from her doorway, and got into the car. Once they arrived at the house, Bob thought briefly of letting Roxanne sleep in the car until she woke herself up. But he decided he couldn't do that. With great effort, he managed to get her into the house and dropped her onto the bed. He went to the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. He felt bad having to say goodbye to the girl in the mirror. Alice had done an amazing job. He unzipped his skirt and unbuttoned his blouse, then deposited both of them on a chair in the bedroom. He peeled off the stockings but noticed he had managed to ruin one of them. Walking barefoot on concrete wasn't a good idea. He resolved to buy Alice a new pair when he returned them. He peeled the panties off and finally undid the bustier. He sighed as his body relaxed, released from its prison. He washed his face, put on his own clean underwear, and climbed into bed. Roxanne was already snoring away. He was exhausted, and it wasn't enough to keep him awake. Sometime later, Bob walked to the door, a paper shopping bag in his hand. He knocked and waited to see if there would be an answer. He'd delayed this long enough. "Bob!" Alice squealed. "It's been a long time. I thought maybe you'd forgotten about me." "No, of course not." He grinned sheepishly. "Things have been a little crazy for a while and, well, I thought I ought to get your things back to you." He handed her the bag. "Thanks. Why don't you come in?" She stepped back out of the doorway, allowing him room to come in. "I didn't care much about the lingerie. That was why I chose it for you that night. I was thinking about getting rid of it. The skirt and blouse, on the other hand, well, it is one of my favorite skirts, so I'm glad to get it back." She tossed the bag onto a chair and sat on the couch. "Can you sit for a minute, or are you disappearing again?" "Yeah, thanks." Bob looked around for a moment and decided to sit on the edge of the couch. "Like I said, things have gotten crazy. The day after the party, Roxanne said she didn't remember much of the night before. When I told her what she did, she said I was lying, and even showing her the clothes didn't convince her. I told her she needed to see a doctor, and she refused. 2 days later, she stopped by a bar and drank far too much again, and I had to get her home. Fortunately, she wasn't quite as belligerent. When I insisted she see a doctor, she started accusing me of trying to stop her from having any fun at all. 2 weeks later, and a few more incidents, I told her to see a doctor, or I was moving out. Well, I found a furnished apartment that rented by the month. I figured when she realized I was serious, maybe she would finally get the help she needed. That didn't go as I planned. A week later, she told me she met someone who wouldn't try and stifle her fun. She wanted a divorce. We filed 2 months ago, and I have been trying to put my life in order since then. I've had that bag of your clothes sitting in a corner of my room since I moved out. I had to buy new stockings because I ruined the pair you gave me walking out to the car and driving that night. Took me a while to find some of the same quality." "Oh, you didn't need to do that," Alice assured him. "I wish you had called. I would have at least been an ear for you to unload to." "Thanks, but that isn't what I wanted things to be like," Bob explained. "Also, I think I wanted things to work out. She may sort herself out, but now things have moved on too far. I think I finally got my head back on straight, which is why I thought I would bring your things back and ask if you had plans for tonight. Maybe a little dinner somewhere." "Oh, Bob, I'm sorry, but I already have plans for tonight," Alice frowned. "Oh yeah, hey, that's okay." Bob got up and started wandering toward the door. "I should have expected that this late a notice wouldn't work. You probably ought to be getting ready. I'll get out of your way." "I wish I didn't, really." Alice followed him to the door. "Hey, no problem." Bob forced a smile as he walked out the door and turned to face her as he reached his car. "Perhaps I'll try again one day soon. I'll just give you more notice next time, okay?" "I'd love that." Alice smiled broadly, trying to show her sincerity. She watched Bob start toward the car door and called out, "Bob!" He stopped and looked. "Do you have plans for tomorrow night?" No, I don't." "What about dinner tomorrow?" She looked about, checking and seeing nobody else. "Formal dinner here. I just bought a beautiful dress for a party last month, and I have another one I wore last year that I am certain would fit you. Say you come over about 4, we'll get dressed when you get here. I'll help you with your makeup again. Then we'll have a nice candlelight dinner and a quiet evening together. That is, if that is still something you would like to do." "Are you serious?" Bob stammered. "Well, yeah," Alice giggled. "You wouldn't believe how often I've thought about that since the party that night, and I couldn't talk to anyone else about doing something like that. It had to be you. I just never thought I would get the opportunity. If you are up for it, that is. I mean, I realize you were forced into your confession that night, and maybe it soured you on the idea." "Truth is," Bob looked around nervously, "I've worn the things I returned today a few times since I moved out. I like to sit there imagining us talking and having a nice time like you said that night." "Great." Alice's face lit up in a genuine smile. "Then I'll see you tomorrow around 4. 2 questions first. Bob asked. Sure, anything. Alice waited. Is there anything you'd like for me to pick up for the dinner? I can get all of it or part of it, whatever you'd like. I'll text you a list tomorrow morning, how's that? She laughed. If I had planned better, there wouldn't be a list. Well, this is last minute and I appreciate it, Bob grinned. The other question, long or short dresses? Long for both of us, Alice winked. Yours is black, beaded, layers of chiffon in the skirt, lace and beading on the top, half sleeves. Since you replaced the stockings, I think the corset will work well with that dress as well. Mine is, well, I think I'd like mine to be a surprise. Maybe if we have as good a time as I think we'll have, you might decide to surprise me one day. I think I'd like that. Bob was tingling with excitement. I'll see you tomorrow at 4, and I think I'll spend tonight looking for some shoes online because I don't want to ruin stocking every time. I won't have them for tomorrow, but I think we'll be doing it again. Sounds like a plan, Alice waved. Hey, if I get home early tonight and want to call you, would it be okay? You can call me whatever time you get home. Bob waved and got in the car. Alice watched as he drove away. She played with the idea of canceling her date for this evening, but she decided it was best to carry through. No sense being rude to the guy, and he had already paid for tickets to a play. She turned and went back into the house, wondering if she could get Bob to tell her what size shoes he might wear. She thought she could get to a store in the morning and find a pair for him for tomorrow night. That would be a nice surprise. That dress would certainly look better on him if he were wearing heels. A shiver ran up her spine, and she giggled with the excitement of the next evening, wishing this evening were already done.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.